what made me choose to do IVF in Mexico, what's helpful to know in making this decision, what's the cost. We're gonna get into it all in this video. I know I said I'd see you post-retrieval, but as long as I'm here and I'm recording while it's top of mind, I'm going to get into why am I doing IVF in Mexico. And much like I do on Instagram and in my last video, we're gonna do some Ask Dr. Brighton style questions. So the first question comes from Admo Brian, who asked, have you moved to do IVF? I haven't moved permanently. I've temporarily relocated during the IVF process. So let me explain that a bit more. My family and I travel roughly 4 to 6 months out of every year. That is because of my work, my job, what I do. Hi, I'm Dr. Jolene Brighton, by the way. I'm an international speaker. I am board certified in naturopathic endocrinology, so I'm a hormone doctor, and I'm also a certified sex counselor. And I travel speaking on stages all over the world, which is amazing. I'm also an author. I've authored several books, so I get a lot of speaking engagements based on that or invitations to do book signings. My recent book is This Normal just came out, so that has me all over the place really doing interviews and promoting the book. We're going to be traveling anyways this summer, and I'm actually going to London for several speaking engagements, including the Health Optimization Summit. I'm going to be speaking on a college campus. There's just a lot going on over there, and so I originally thought, because of timing in mind, that I would do IVF in Spain. If you've never looked into Spain, they're definitely one of the top countries leading advanced reproductive technology. It is a really great place to go through IVF in terms of their standards and just how far ahead they are of everyone else. Now, if you're familiar with the United States, you also know that healthcare is astronomical. IVF is no exception. And I am fortunately enough to be in a position that I could afford going through IVF in the United States. However, because of my insurance living in Puerto Rico and how everything is set up, I would not have coverage enough that if something happened, like ovarian torsion, heaven forbid, any complications from the procedure, like any of that, I don't have enough coverage to go into a US hospital, nor do I want to go into a US hospital. Quite frankly, it would become very, very costly. So that is definitely one of the things that contributed to my decision. But I really thought I was going to go with Spain because we were going to be in Europe. I thought, okay, we'll just fly there. We'll get to Europe early. I will do the stims and the retrieval. Then I'll go speak. I'll do work for a month. I'll come back. I'll do another round of retrievals. And then I have a next engagement, and I would actually have to come back to the US. And so it's like, oh, I'll make that trip. And as I was looking at all of that, I'm like, that's really stressful to be doing that much travel while going through IVF, which you might be like, but you're in Mexico right now. True. Okay, we're gonna get to that. With that, that is why I was like, Spain is amazing. Spain is affordable. Their healthcare is awesome. And it was convenient in terms of where I would be. And so that was the main reason that had me start thinking outside of the United States. And once I started to think outside the United States, then I started to expand, looking at Turkey, looking at Greece, just starting to look at other countries, and Mexico came up as well. Now, with Mexico, definitely by proximity of travel, it's a lot more convenient. And here are the top reasons why I picked Mexico. Number one, after interviewing clinics in Spain and then interviewing clinics in Mexico, I landed on a doctor that I really liked, I really trusted. She was the first to give me a true informed consent regarding how bad this could be. Everybody else was like, it'll be fine, you'll be fine. I don't like that, because I know that's not true. And they didn't know they were talking to a doctor when they were saying that. So I get that people don't want to scare people away from IVF, but at the same time, I need to have all the information and know I can trust you with that. Now, it actually had written off Mexico because there was one main clinic that like everyone goes to from the US, and I met with them and they were like, we have a guarantee program, and they're like, sign up today. It was just like, oh my God, I just feel like I'm being sold to, and I don't want a guarantee because guarantees don't exist in IVF and guarantees don't exist in medicine, and your guarantee is going to guarantee me a donor egg so that you get full payment. It just gave me the icks. So it actually ruled out Mexico, and I was like, no, forget that noise. And then I met with this doctor, Dr. Debbie Cassis, and she was just great. And I was like, I trust her. I like her. I feel like we're vibing. It was a really good doctor interview, because you should interview your doctors when it comes to something like IVF. So there was the doctor. Then there was the proximity to where I live. I used to be able to get a direct flight to Spain. Direct flights now became $5,000 a person. So when you have a family of 4, $20,000 just to fly to a country, that's more than the cost of the IVF. Financially, that wasn't making sense. Then there was just the stress of like, how do you get there? And some of the flights, there's like 24 hours of travel. I can't go through IVF and the exhaustion of 24 hours of travel. Like that's not gonna work. The other reason why I chose Mexico is because there is the option of having a surrogate. In Spain, there is no option of having a surrogate. And this is just important to me because if we decide that we do want to have 4 kids, okay? This is just like maybe. I'm not saying I'm having 4 kids. Don't get excited yet. But if we decided that, but let's say something happened during this 3rd pregnancy that made it so I was unable to carry a future pregnancy. So something happens to my uterus, for example. Baby container no longer has the potential to contain babies. If that happened and I still have viable embryos, I want to hold the option that I could transfer that to a surrogate. In Spain, you do not have it. You can transfer your embryos to another country, but like, come on, like, oh my God, like talk about stress. I did not want to have that stress. Another reason why people will pick Mexico is because you can select gender. And the US and Mexico are 2 of maybe the only countries that allow you to do gender selection and transfer based on gender. I have 2 boys. My husband would love to have a girl. I'm gonna like, I really love boys. If I got a girl, that would be great, whatever. This is not a big factor for me, and it's actually not a big factor for my husband either, because what we want is the most viable, healthy embryo. That is what we want. We want the healthiest baby that we can have. And so some people do, however, choose Mexico because they want to balance their family. They're in a situation where they do have 2, 3, 4 boys, and they're like, I'd really like to have a girl. Now, cost. Absolutely less expensive than what you will get in the United States. Pretty much every country out there doing IVF, except for maybe Canada, and I think even the UK, is less expensive than the United States. And there have been arguments made to me where people are like, that's because the US technology is so much better. I'm telling you, Spain was the first place that ever did IVF, that ever had a successful transfer. They really are leading in a lot of ways. And that's not to say you cannot find amazing doctors in the United States. If you follow The Egg Whisperer or Dr. Laura Shaheen, who I'm also a fan of, they're phenomenal doctors. But there are lots of women who are coming to Mexico because of the cost, because they get to live in Mexico for a while, and that's amazing. It is amazing here. How long am I in Mexico? This first retrieval, I'm going to be here for 3 weeks. I'm going to leave. I'm going to go do all of my work and the travel that I need to do. And then I'll be coming back here for a couple of months. And in that couple of months' time, I may be going into a transfer. I may be doing a second retrieval. The plan right now is a second retrieval, but honestly, I'm so sick of these blood draws. Don't even care about the injections. The freaking blood draws. I don't want to do it. But, give me a month. I'll probably go back to like common sense, and it'll also depend on what happens after the retrieval. So I did have a question from Jack Frida about the thoughts on fertility acupuncture directly before or after transfer. Yeah, friend. Yes. I hate needles. Okay. I hate them. Unless I'm putting them in myself, I can inject myself. Fine. Oi, but even acupuncture, I'm just man, I hate these needles. And yet, through my pregnancies, I will get acupuncture. I will do it. I attended a college that also had a Chinese medicine program in it. And so I just know enough about it that I'm like, girl, suck it up and do it. We always need more research when it comes to what's called complementary and alternative medicine, or CAM. Really, acupuncture, I think, should just be standard in so much of medicine. So complementary to medical procedures as well. Yes, I will be doing acupuncture. The clinic that I chose here in Mexico, they offer acupuncture and massage and also couples therapy through this process as part of the package. I think it's an excellent complement to going through IVF. I think even around the retrievals, I considered doing it with the retrieval, but I just have had so much stress with the blood draws. I just really need to not have more needles, and that's what I need. But for some people, for many people, for most people, I feel like I'm such an outlier. It is really relaxing to have acupuncture, and it's just really a great modality to have along with your IVF journey. So what does it cost in general? This is something that I don't have the total cost, right? Because I haven't got to transfer yet. But the packages tend to be around $7,000 to $10,000. And that includes all the ultrasounds, the blood work that you need to have done, and all of the doctor's visits. I mean, the whole shebang except for the meds. The meds you have to pay extra for. And the meds can range anywhere from $1,500 to $3,000. All of this is in US dollars. Now, if you're doing different protocols, different kinds of procedures, it can certainly cost more for the meds. And if you stim longer, that's definitely going to cost more because you're going to need more medication. I had to pay today for the retrieval that is tomorrow. And I have to look up, actually, let me just look it up right now. So I was originally supposed to pay about $6,000 and some change, and now I'm paying $4,741, and I'm just like having a moment here on camera because I actually hadn't calculated it. I paid it today, and I was like, oh, cool. Like when I got there, they were like, you're gonna get a 20% discount because it's May, and I was like, oh, okay, I don't know what that means. And so I had like the 104,000 pesos in my mind, and then they were like, it's 80-something thousand pesos, and I was like, okay, cool, that's less. And I got caught up with a bunch of stuff. I actually hadn't even done the calculation yet. So I'm just like having a moment where I'm like, that is so ridiculously cheap. I haven't added up how much my meds were. And if I had to estimate, I'd probably say they were about $2,500. So that would bring me up to about $7,000. I'm just rounding here. And then the PGTA testing though is definitely more expensive in Mexico compared to Spain. Spain's like, it's 150 it's 150 euros for like 5 embryos. And here it's like 675 per embryo for the first 3. And then the price goes down for each subsequent embryo after that. So there's tiers. And I talked to him about it because I was like, what gives? Like, it's so much cheaper in Spain. And they're like, it's what the labs charge. And I'm sure there's like a markup that they're doing as well because that's the way, a business works. However, I do find that pretty pricey. But now that I'm looking at this number, I'm just like, wow, this is a happy surprise on camera. I'm like, oh, if I wasn't recording on my phone right now, because I'm traveling, I don't have my camera, but if I wasn't recording on my phone, I would be texting my husband right now being like, oh my God, did you know? We just saved like $1,500. Like, that's amazing. Okay, so CBG 723 asks, is the process easier with a doctor in other countries? Is the process easier with doctors in other countries? I don't know that it necessarily is. I am not fluent enough in Spanish, especially medical Spanish, to get by with their MAs. I'm all about full transparency, and I don't want ever to make a situation of like, ooh, the grass is so green and this is nothing but rainbows over here, without being honest about the entire experience. My doctor is fluent in English. The MAs, the people drawing your blood, are not. And there was a time when one of the MAs was left to do the medication consult and just let us know what meds we were doing. Now, the first one my doctor did. And then after that, the next one the MA did, but it was all Spanish. And I didn't understand it. And my husband, who's freaking polite to a fault. Sorry, my ovary is not happy right now. It's like, girl, you gotta move. So he just was like, yeah, it's being so nice. I'm like starting to have a panic because I'm like, I don't understand what's going on. I'm the patient here. Like, and what is actually happening here? I was like, do you actually understand what she's saying? Could you tell me how to administer this medicine? And he looked at me and he's like, no, not at all. I was like, then you need to say that, sir, because you can't just sit here and be polite when this is a medication consult. My doctor ended up coming in after that. She gave me the instructions in writing in English. And when she called me later that day with my lab results, I was like, listen, I'm not happy with how this went down. I cannot be given medication or any medical instructions purely in Spanish. When I interviewed you to come to this clinic, I asked, does everybody speak English? And I was told that yes, it's not a problem. This is definitely a problem. They said they would resolve it. 2 more times this happened. I just was like, no, we're going to stop this right now. I'm not cool with this. Here's the thing. As a patient, you always feel a little bit extra. And even as a doctor, I know how MAs get. They were actually kind. Nobody to my face was like, you suck. You're like being a pain in the ass. But I definitely walked away with the feeling of like, God, I'm being that extra patient. And I think that's just a normal experience as a patient if you've ever had that experience in the past. But they didn't do anything to necessarily make me feel that way. That was definitely my own thing. The other thing that I will say was just really tough for me is they only had 21 gauge needles in their office. I actually had to go buy my own 23 gauge needles. I have like... Man, if I could show you all the bruises on me, I don't think they'd even show up, and I've got Band-Aids on and stuff, but I have very small veins. I had COVID and post-COVID syndrome, and that wrecked a lot of my veins, having to have IVs, and there's just a lot of issues that came from that. And so the veins I do have left are really small, and they went in with 21 gauges on multiple veins, multiple times, and man, did they just wreck them. And I even had somebody digging around in the wrong spot yesterday, and they don't know I'm a doctor, and I'm trying to give them guidance and like translating it in Spanish, trying to be in like Spanish, like don't hit the valve of my vein, like you're not on the vein. Let me just say that I have these small veins. And so that is definitely part of it, but not being able to communicate with them and then them just like speaking Spanish, making no effort to speak any English or like meet me halfway, that has been really, really hard. And there have been a couple of times where I've broken down crying, regretting my decision. Now, part of that is definitely hormones, not to be like gaslighting myself or being like, oh, it's just your hormones. But part of it is there's the stress of being away from home, stress of going through procedures, and then like your estrogen's up and your hormones are up. And last night I was crying and I was doing my trigger injections, and I was just like, after the blood draw that I went through yesterday, I was like, I regret this. I think I made a bad decision. I just like had a full-on cry breakdown. And when I woke up this morning and I had to go back to the clinic to get a blood draw, and it wasn't great again, even after that, I was like, they're so nice there. Like the staff is really so nice, and my doctor is really good, and there's just been this like freaking issue with the blood draws that I'm like, I don't feel that way. That's what I'm trying to say, is I don't feel that way now. I don't feel like, oh, I'm regretting it and I made a bad decision. But I just want to be honest that I went there. So, to the question that CBG 723 had, is it easier with doctors in other countries? I don't know. I think in some ways it is, because they're going to do extra lab testing. So like Spain is going to do a whole lot of lab testing. In Mexico, if I ask for labs, I get them. And in the US, it's not always like that. Sometimes your doctor will deny you labs. Sometimes you can't get the workup you need. Sometimes insurance is blocking you. So it really depends. I'm sharing this like honest experience. There are lots and lots of women coming to Mexico. They have no problems whatsoever. They totally love their clinics there. Everything is like so great for them. And at least that's what they're saying. Who knows what the whole story is, honestly, because I think that when we make such a big financial commitment and such a big life commitment, like there's this concept called sunk cost, where you can walk away from something and be like, sunk cost, like made a bad decision, gonna have to let it go, gonna have to eat that money. You can't just like let your embryos go, okay? Like that is like not a thing. At least for me, I am not okay with that. Like money, there will be more money. My eggs, there will not be more eggs. So anyhow, I know this was a very long way to answer that question. I think it's just very individualized. If you speak the language in the country, if like the clinic truly does have everybody fluent, I think that, that's just a different scenario. What I would say is interview your clinic. Make sure you have all the information and make sure you're comfortable. And that clinic might be in the United States. It might be in Prague or Turkey or Greece or Spain or Mexico or somewhere else. But you've got to feel really comfortable with that clinic. But know that in medicine, there are always hiccups. And even what I described now to you, It's happening in Mexico. It wouldn't be abnormal to have that experience in Puerto Rico, where I live. It wouldn't be abnormal to have that experience in the United States. Like, it wouldn't be abnormal to have that experience in any other clinic. So that's, you know, even though I'm like, I just want to be like really transparent about like what this experience has been like for me, but also honest that like this could happen anywhere in the world. This is not Mexico specific. All right, upcoming, I still owe you videos on the number of embryos we retrieved. So I'll talk through the drop off of how many eggs did we get, how many fertilized. I'll walk you through that whole process. For Kayla, who was asking, what am I doing to support my body through stims? Like I was saying in my previous video, my stims have been, it's been a good time compared to the birth control pill. I think it's because of what I'm doing to support myself. And Jen was asking, will you give us a breakdown of how you prepared for IVF? I did one round and it was so if anyone wants to put in the comments what sucked about IVF for you, and I can definitely give some strategies. If you don't know, I'm a nutrition scientist as well, and I've been a nutrition scientist for a couple of decades now, and I've definitely leveraged food as medicine through this IVF process, as well as doing some really smart supplementation for what actually works for egg quality and for supporting estrogen detox. I am happy to talk through all of that, and you can definitely let me know in the comments like what specific questions that you have, and I will try to answer as many questions as I'm comfortable with. All right, so tomorrow is my retrieval day, and I'm definitely anxious and nervous, and if you can send love and luck and baby dust, I will appreciate it so much. Thanks for being here.